everyone, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Crystal.
And this is Garbage Heart Out of the Can for the new Sherlock Holmes movie. For the reference of everyone out there, we are talking about the two movies that have come out in recent years starring Robert Downey Jr. as Sherlock Holmes. And a whole bunch of other people playing a bunch of other characters.
Mm-hmm.
But
sounds good.
it's Robert Downey Jr.'s show.
Yeah.
Now, we are both Sherlock Holmes fans.
Yes.
Big Sherlock Holmes fans. Both big fans of the stories, the original Sir Arthur Conan Doyle stories.
Yes.
I personally remember reading them as a kid, going into them. I read a lot of them actually on car trips. Going to and from my grandparents, I could read a story almost perfectly.
Right.
It fit that 1 hour and a half to 2 hour slot of my life perfectly. And so it really filled that time, and I got through both volumes that way. I know you read a lot of them too.
Yeah.
And we're both kind of sad it's not exactly required reading in schools anymore.
Yeah,
And
it is. And it's not really talked about. In fact, we have friends who had no idea Sherlock Holmes was based off of a book.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because telling our good buddies about the new Sherlock Holmes movies, like, yeah, we didn't think it followed close to the story. Like, there's a book.
Yeah.
It's like, but
there's several.
there's actually 2 volumes of short stories and a novel, The Baskervilles, and a litany of other books, unofficial works, etc. So yes, there is a ton of Sherlock Holmes books you can find. But for us, the best audiovisual representation has always been the it's called the Granada TV series, but if you're in the United States, you probably best remember it as either the PBS or the A&E series that ran from 1984 to 1994, starring none other than the unfortunately late, great Jeremy Brett.
Yes. He's awesome.
The man. When it comes to being Sherlock Holmes, he's the man. Now, a lot of people like Basil Rathbone. That's the 1939, 1945 series of movies. It's like, I think it was 14 movies is what we read before we came in here. But I've only seen a few of them, to be honest.
Right.
He did a great job with the movies. The ones I saw, though, it played Sherlock Holmes as a very superhuman character. Focused in on him as the super sleuth, the impossible human being, kind of a superhero almost of his age. He was the goddamn Batman.
Before there was Batman.
Not true.
The serials.
Movies.
Yeah.
We gotta go back and get that one later, don't we?
Yeah, we do have to talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe make that an actual episode or something because that one deserves some time.
Yeah.
But no, it focused on that. The Jeremy Brett one stayed very close to the stories.
Right.
And in turn stayed very close to the character of Sherlock Holmes, who was a very morally ambiguous, deeply flawed, and very unusual character, very full-bodied character, if you will.
Right. I mean, it didn't show him as perfect.
No.
By any stretch.
In fact, it highlighted his imperfection in many episodes and many times. And beyond being, the Robert Downey Jr. one, his imperfection is he's kind of a douchebag. Jeremy Brett's was a deeply flawed, deeply obsessive, arrogant, angry,
sexually ambiguous drug user.
And, very misogynistic at times. And even in the books, Sherlock Holmes is actually quite racist, too. So, deeply flawed character, but it adds to the depth of him.
Right.
And it's not supposed to make you like him. It's supposed to make you believe him.
Right.
And it does. It helps a great deal with that. The Jeremy Brett one, though, it stayed close to the books. They're short stories. They can be done in an hour-long TV series pretty effectively.
Yes.
You don't have to, snip all that much out. And they did a really good job with it. I mean, Jeremy Brett's awesome, but the other actors in it, incredible talents. The sets
were perfect.
The design, everything, meticulous. These guys put attention to every detail. Every actor, every costume, every book on the shelf, everything in that series was exactly as it should be for that time period.
Right.
You really were convinced, and this was amazing for PBS and A&E at the time, but you were truly convinced that they were in the industrial revolution era England there. Really good job selling it. The new Sherlock Holmes, not so much. I don't know.
Well, I will say this. Where the PBS series was able to get the whole story into a 30-minute slot or an hour-long slot.
It was an hour-long slot, yeah.
Hour-long slot. It seems like they cut so much out of the story, especially in the second movie.
Yeah, the second in the new movies.
Of the new ones, yeah. It seemed like it cut a lot out.
Even though it's a made-up story.
Right.
Even though it's a completely... this is basically fan fiction for Sherlock Holmes. Let's not kid ourselves here. This is not one of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's canon works, if you will.
No, but you would think that a movie starring Moriarty as the arch-villain would go a lot more into it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, they kind of set up Moriarty in the first one, the Sherlock Holmes, and the second one being Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows. They kind of set up Moriarty a little bit. He appeared at the very end of it.
Right.
And then he's just kind of there.
Yeah.
And they don't really give you too much backstory other than you know he's really smart, you know he's decidedly evil, and he's a bastard and Sherlock has to stop him.
Right.
That's pretty much all you get out of him.
Right.
And it's kind of disappointing because over the stories, of course, he's developed over a long period of time.
Right.
I mean, through the entire first volume, all the way up to the final problem there, which wasn't the final problem because he came back.
Yeah.
But, all the way up to that point, it was a very slow evolution of Moriarty. Not, he's here, he's here!
Yeah, yeah.
It was kind of weird for me that way.
More cloak and dagger.
Yeah, it was like, okay, at first there's someone pulling the strings, and then you get glimpses of who he might be, and then all of a sudden, we're at war with Moriarty. That's when it actually begins.
Right.
And that was much more interesting. To me, the problem I have with the Robert Downey Jr. movies is they don't feel like Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
You see, I love Robert Downey Jr. I'm coming out and saying that. I do love him as an actor. Mm-hmm. He is a great Tony Stark / Iron Man.
He was also very good in Fur.
Yeah, he was. He's a very, very talented actor. But the problem is he's taking that Tony Stark persona and trying to apply it to Sherlock Holmes. It's like he's carrying that particular style over almost.
Well, it's the same kind of style, but I think that the writing...
Yeah, the writing.
...is really what's lacking. Because it's not a Sherlock Holmes story.
No.
It's more action-oriented.
Yeah, I mean, the movies take tiny sections of Sherlock Holmes' character. Mm-hmm. In the original stories, they do talk about Sherlock being quite the pugilist and the judo master. He is a boxer. He is a judo master. And they talk a good deal, they talk some at least, about Watson's shooting ability and his time in the military and so forth. They do talk about these things, but they're very background.
Right.
They're just a tiny, insignificant part of the story. In fact, the judo thing doesn't really come into play until his actual struggle with Moriarty and the final problem.
Right.
So it's very, very minor stuff. They take it and they blow it up and they make a whole movie about it. Because now Sherlock Holmes is in fist fights in the first 2 minutes of the new movie.
Right.
And it's nonstop action when it's not Holmes.
No, it's not Holmes. And in the first movie, the problem that we had when we were telling our friends that hadn't read the books and didn't know that Sherlock Holmes existed before the first movie, how I don't know. But anyway, our
friends are idiots, okay?
Some of them. They had a problem with it not being action oriented enough and thinking that it was boring. We had a problem with it being not intellectual enough.
Yeah.
And thinking it wasn't Sherlock Holmes. So they kind of missed both marks with the first movie. And that's why they went completely action almost on the second one.
And it really bugged me in the second one. Mm-hmm. Because when I go to a movie entitled Sherlock Holmes, I'm there for a battle of wits. I want to see some sleuthing, some figuring, some detective work. And I didn't get that out of this movie. The Game of Shadows, I got it some in the first one. Mm-hmm. It kind of scratched that itch a little bit.
Right.
And it made me at least relatively happy. I mean, I walked out of that one kind of,
Yeah.
I didn't hate it.
It was a movie, but a good movie, but not as Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, I kind of just, if you took it on its own, it was a good film.
Right.
This one failed me because it seemed like a mediocre action flick.
Yeah.
That actually kind of skimped on the actual violence part of the action.
Right. Well, the other things, let's get some nitpicky things in here. One, when I'm watching Sherlock Holmes, I like to try to figure out what's going on.
And it's got to be a challenge and a possible one at the same time.
Exactly. And in this one, they would focus in on clues, like spend 1 or 2 seconds, right, exactly. Here's the clue. You should pay attention to this.
Yeah, and then then they don't give you other critical pieces of...
Right. And that was very frustrating because it's like, well, I noticed that and that, but you didn't give me any context.
You didn't give me the third thing to put it all together. It's like you didn't even show it.
Right. It's like, building up a murder mystery and having the murderer be someone that you've never met before.
Yeah. It's a gorilla.
Yeah. Well, actually,
that's Edgar Allan Poe, I know.
Oh, well, that too. But there was a book that I read
that pulled something similar.
Yeah, and it was frustrating as hell.
It really,
anyway.
That element of it bugged me because if you were into the sleuthing part of it, you couldn't possibly really scratch that itch with this film.
No.
It worked hard to keep that out of your reach. It made it both painfully obvious and painfully unobvious at the same time. Painfully impossible at the same time, I should say. So yeah, that in that regard, it just failed me. And honestly, with this film, I'm disappointed with the way they treated Moriarty.
Yes.
I'm very, very... I mean, he is supposed to be Holmes's equal.
Right.
His foil. Just like Sherlock, but evil.
Yeah.
Morally and once again, moral ambiguity. Moriarty, you could always argue his intentions are pure from his perspective. Mm-hmm. You can always argue that with him. But here, he's the evil foil, but he's something completely different. He's a nemesis, but not an equal. I mean, they try to paint him as one, but yet he keeps getting pounced easily.
Yeah.
It's kind of painful.
Yeah, we're not going to go into any spoilers, so...
But basically speaking, he didn't feel like an even match for Sherlock.
No, he didn't.
And they were very heavy-handed with the symbolism.
Right.
I mean, the chess symbolism toward the end got way in your face. I mean, everyone's dancing on a chessboard, and Sherlock and Moriarty are outside on the balcony playing actual chess, talking about what's going on in the room as actual chess, and...
Yeah.
It's like, here's the symbolism, ask me what it means. It's just in your face, and it's pointless. This is a Sherlock Holmes movie for stupid people. I think I just hit it.
Okay. So on that note,
if you like it, you're an idiot. That's what I'm saying. No, I'm kidding.
No, that's not true.
Saying. That's not true. But it's a Sherlock Holmes aimed at the brain off crowd. How's that?
That's fair. Yeah. I also didn't like the way that they edited the action in this movie. I mean, if you like the bullet time from Max Payne and from The Matrix.
Yeah, that style of thing.
It's way overused in this, and you'll love it.
Yeah, it is painfully overused in this, and it's used in scenes that don't really call for it. There's one particularly egregious scene where they're running through the woods while being shot at. And the problem is this is a fast-paced action sequence. This is a getaway.
Right.
They need to leave. They're running. So they run, slow down randomly to show something, then run. It's like it completely screws up the rhythm of what should be the heart pumping, pounding action sequence, and it's like, okay, so now we're gonna get time to idly look at this scene. Oh, look, a leaf. It's just
oh look, the wood is splintering.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's a lot about that scene I don't understand.
Yeah, and it doesn't make a lot of sense in its own context. Mm-mm. And that's the other problem with the action, is that a lot of it just flat out doesn't make sense.
Right.
All in all, I tolerated the first one pretty well.
Yeah.
I came away saying some good and some bad about it. And I liked it enough to go see the second.
Right.
I don't think I'm going to go see a third if there is one.
Probably not.
I think I'm done with this series. You know what? We got the Jeremy Brett series on DVD. Mm-hmm. We've got it in Netflix.
Right.
Next time we want a Sherlock Holmes kick, that's what we're doing. Sorry, Robert Downey Jr. We'll see you in the new Iron Man movies, though. Mm-hmm. We will be back for you because you do play a good douchebag, I got to admit. And you do it great as Tony Stark, because Tony Stark is a douchebag. That's how it's supposed to work. Any final thoughts on Sherlock Holmes?
No.
Me either. Let's throw it out. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Crystal.
And this was Garbage Heart Out of the Can for the new Sherlock Holmes movie. We do love you, Robert Downey Jr.